So when I was discussing Season 2 of Halo Infinite a couple of days ago, I briefly touched on the fact that I've been playing a lot of the new Floodfight mode in Halo 3 ODST via the Master Chief Collection. Firefight has always been a favourite mode of mine, harkening back to the days of sort of Gears of War 2's Horde mode as well. I just love a good wave-based PvE mode in games, and the original version of Firefight in Halo 3 ODST is the best incarnation of it across the Halo games. Halo Reach's Firefight was okay, but I feel like it lost a lot of what made ODST special, and let's not even begin to get into the discussion on Halo 5's Warzone Firefight. It was a mode that had good potential, but which threw everything that made Firefight, it just completely threw every single thing out the window. Halo 3 ODST's Firefight makes you feel like you're up against it with nowhere to run. You're not a Spartan, but you are the next best thing. You can still get the job done, but you can't take nearly as much punishment. One wrong move in ODST's variation of Firefight can result in you becoming overwhelmed and out of lives very quickly. And now, with this latest update that has added Flood enemies to the mix, things have just gotten a whole lot more challenging. The Flood are terrifying and will absolutely wipe the floor with your team if you don't respect what each form can bring to the table. They act in a way that no other Halo enemy type does, sometimes to an often terrifying degree. Just because you've taken down a Flood form doesn't necessarily mean that you've killed it. I've been having a lot of fun with this mode since it launched, but a lot of my teammates who I've match-made into games with don't seem to be that familiar with how to overcome this new foe, which is why today I've decided to put together this little video going over a few tips on how to manage the Flood outbreak efficiently and effectively, using various weapon combos and a few other little tricks that you might not have thought of before. To begin with, let's go over some weapon choices. You may remember 343 Guilty Spark's choice words at the beginning of Halo Combat Evolved's library mission. Roll the clip.
Puzzling. You brought such ineffective weapons to combat the Flood, despite the containment protocols.
Well, I'm here to tell you right now that the floating eyeball is absolutely wrong. There are 3 weapons I'm going to recommend you try to hang on to during Floodfight, and they are the suppressed SMG, the automag pistol, and finally, the battle rifle. Now you're probably noticing that 2 of these weapons are the ones that you begin the round with, and to that I'll say good job, very astute observation. But the fact is that these 2 weapons in the right hands are all you need to get going, and this is something I'll go over when covering some of the different enemy types in just a minute. The battle rifle, on the other hand, is something you can always swap out your automag for if you so desire. I find that it makes headshots just that little bit easier at further ranges. Aside from those 3 weapons though, I would highly recommend picking up an energy weapon such as a plasma rifle or Covenant carbine off the ground from time to time in order to deal with the red armoured Flood elites, or as I like to call them, these mother... You're especially going to need to invest in the occasional energy weapon as well when the tilt skull comes into play, which makes enemies more resistant and or weak to certain things. And when it comes to these guys, it means if you're not packing energy weapons, you're going to have a really bad time getting through their shields. Speaking of enemies, let's talk about the one that I see giving people the most trouble to begin with. The Flood tank form.
My name is Jeff.
I see people struggling to kill these things, especially when there are 5 or 6 of them all bounding towards you, eager for your flesh. But I find there are 4 ways to take these guys out, and I'm going to start by going back to those initial 3 weapons I mentioned. Don't waste your suppressed SMG ammo on this guy, and instead take out your automag or battle rifle and pop this guy right in his gangly mouth hole. He'll sometimes raise up his hand to try and stop you from getting shots in, but you can still get some through. The tank forms actually go down surprisingly quickly by doing this, but alternatively, if you have a firebomb grenade, throw that bad boy at a tank form and watch him go down literally instantly. Flamethrowers are also good, but they're not so readily available on some maps, so firebombs. Get out there and commit some arson. Thirdly, the brute shot, and I'm not talking about the grenades it fires, but they are also good. Instead, just whack this tree trunk on legs a few times with the pointy end and he should go down quite easily. Finally, mounted machine gun turrets. If you have a tank form and it's in direct line of sight of one of these things, just open up on him and try to go for the gangly face hole if you can. But what happens when tank form transforms into one of its other 2 variations? What happens when he transforms into the super fast buggy boy and gets his Nikes on?
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
Well, I'll be honest, this guy, the Flood Stalker form, he's not actually too bad. All you really need to do is just try and hit him in the back. That's literally it. Just get behind him and assassinate the f*** out of him. He's really not too bad to handle. But then we get Satan himself. We get the Flood ranged form who, on certain maps, becomes the bane of my goddamn existence. You'll find the buggy boys I mentioned previously. They'll climb up walls and get into really annoying places just to turn themselves into this demon that will then just sit and pepper you with quills or whatever the fuck this is from a distance. The best way to deal with this, going back to the weapons I outlined at the start again, is to tap fire your suppressed SMG at them. They'll go down fairly quickly, but there will probably be multiple, so be prepared to burn through all of your ammo. If you do find one of them on the ground in this form though, even though it's quite rare, a swift kick to the back of... again, I really don't know what this thing is, that's enough to take them out. Moving away from the pure form Flood, however, we also have Flood that can go invisible. As if they weren't terrifying enough. These Flood typically come wielding maulers and can be a real pain if you let them get all up in your business without realizing. The best counter to these guys is to sort of switch on your visor mode because it will outline them in your HUD, but this tends to only work on the nighttime maps. It's not always the best, however, because turning on the visor during the day literally sears your eyes out. Carrier forms though, we should probably talk about these guys for a second. So these walking pustules on legs move slowly and explode after you shoot them. The best weapon for the job? Once again, it's your trusty suppressed SMG. Just tap fire them a few times and you should be golden. Except you're not, because now you've got a sea of infector forms to deal with. Fret not though, because there is a way to deal with carrier forms without unleashing a tidal wave of infectors, and that's to simply stick them with either a plasma or a spike grenade. You still get that nice pop, but none of the subsequent regret. But oh no! What happens if you don't have any grenades and you've had to pop and unleash the infector forms? And now they're doing the worst thing imaginable. They're literally going around and resurrecting a bunch of Flood that you've just wasted your precious ammo putting down, not 5 seconds earlier. What is an ODST to do in this situation? Smash. Literally destroy the bodies of any Flood that you've already killed if you've got the time to. A couple of melee attacks on a Flood corpse is enough to break it apart and render it completely useless to the infector forms. Take that, you sneaky little cat. And finally, in terms of enemies, we have the Forerunner Sentinels. Literally run and hide. These things will eat you alive. They can kill you in a stupidly short amount of time, and there are also multiple of them flying around. Just stay back, try and bring down their energy shields with an energy weapon if you can, and then pepper them with bursts from your suppressed SMG. If you succeed, you'll live to see your ODST family another day. Moving on, I briefly want to talk about the vehicles on certain maps. Predominantly I'm talking about Lost Platoon and, to a lesser extent, Last Exit and also Security Zone. Warthogs and Ghosts can get a fair bit of work done at first, but as the rounds go on, their weapons become very ineffective against pretty much everything. But you know what a Warthog and a Ghost can do that is still effective? Speaking of things that aren't effective in the slightest though, the sniper rifle. This thing is not good against the Flood whatsoever. You need headshots to get kills on most Flood, and a single burst from a battle rifle or a round from the automag is enough. So why would I use the sniper rifle? Spare yourself the pain and don't even bother with it. Which is saying something because, oh my god, why do you make us start with sniper rifles on Windward in Floodfight? This is literally the worst idea in the world. This poor sod always has his automag stolen at the beginning of every round, as I basically sign his death sentence by making him fight Flood with a sniper rifle. Not only that, but Windward also has this area at the back of the map on each side, where a bunch of the Flood ranged forms will continuously respawn. You can't get up there, so basically have fun wasting all of your ammo on this devil spawn unless you want to be caught out in the open by them as you run for your life. Windward just isn't it for Floodfight. But you know what is it for Floodfight? Elites. So, one of the new additions that has been made to Firefight is AI teammates, which includes these two fine and distinguished Sankhili warriors, who will help you out on the Rally Night map. And you know what makes these guys even better? The fact that if one of the Flood drops an energy sword, you can give it to one of these elites and he will absolutely go to town, beating down everything in his path. And talking of beatdowns, don't be afraid to get your hands messy in Floodfight as well. Most of the run-of-the-mill Flood you'll fight can only take 1 or 2 melee hits before going down, and as mentioned earlier, it's also a great way to destroy the Flood corpses so they can't reanimate when you least expect it. And finally, I just want to make a brief point about flamethrowers. Teammates, please, stop killing me with your overzealous flamethrower usage. I get that it's fun, but fire hurts. Not just the Flood. I'm just as squishy as you are. Please commit your war crimes in a safe and discreet manner. Okay. Thanks.